Javonte Williams, the first domino to fall in this year's free agent running back market for the Houston Texans. What does that mean for the now and for the future?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texan podcast is for Texan fans all around. Fun show lined up for you as always. Going to dive into whether or not DeMeco Ryans is the next Tony Dungy. Stick around for that as I end off the show with that conversation. Also, how long does Cade Stover and Brevin Jordan have here in Houston? But opening up today's show with this conversation is centered around Javonte Williams being the first domino to fall in this year's running back market. New contract. He's going to return back to Dallas. And I think the numbers add up to the expectations. Also, what's next for Houston? No Williams. He's off the market. The money is a good baseline. We'll go from there. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Shout out to my everydayers from the Himalayas for making the Locked On Texan podcast your first listen of the day and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the nation. And as we dive into, free agency, we're going to continue with the draft talk. I have a additional bonus coverage later today, this afternoon, talking about a player in Etienne that I think if the Houston Texans address free agency the right way, create the space that they need to, the money that they need to create, to go after some of the vet savvy, experienced offensive linemen who may cost a pretty penny or two. Then when you get to the draft sitting at the 28th pick, if Sadiq is available between 18 and 28, I trade up for him, no doubt about it. But as we look at free agency and the draft and what the Houston Texans should do, in many ways, it's all about adding to what they already have. Outside of offensive line, I think you got to revamp that. But at the running back room, it's adding to what you already have. You got Woody Marks, and a lot of people are big on Breece Hall. I think for Houston, Breece Hall makes a lot of sense. He can catch out of the backfield. He's good in short yardage situations. He understands how to make a man miss. He's played behind poor or underperforming, underwhelming offensive lines before and ran for a good yards per pop. He makes the most sense. He's still available. The Jets have not franchise tagged him as of yet, but the Dallas Cowboys did re-sign Javonte Williams, and he is the first domino to fall in this year's running back market. And his contract, I think, sets a good baseline on what the Houston Texans should actually see from this running back market this year. He signed a 3-year deal worth $24 million with guarantee money sitting at 16. The new AAV is $8 million. And right now it feels like for Javonte Williams, who's in a tier 2 running back class this year, where you got Najee Harris. Well, Najee Harris is a free agent, by the way. But you also got Travis Etienne, Rico Dowdle, Breece Hall, like I mentioned, Kenneth Walker, like I mentioned earlier throughout last week. You got players like Kenneth Gainwell, like some of these players that are available this year. It's all about the tier that they're going to fall in. And for Dallas getting this move done early, it helps out the rest of the league, but it also helps out the Houston Texans. Because if, number one, if Javonte Williams is getting $8 million a year, that puts him in that tier 2 class. It looks like for the tier 1 class, $11 million is going to be the cap. Maybe you get to 12, depending on how teams really view Kenneth Walker, who I think in terms of a pure free agent, he is he's the guy that has the hardware. He's the guy that has the playoff run. He's the guy that has the Super Bowl MVP attached to his name now and led that team with Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigma, who was the offensive player of the year, led that team to a Super Bowl win. So I think in many ways, maybe he could get to 12. And I talked about that last week. Maybe he's the one that can get to 12. But for the most part, there's not a CMC in this in this free agent class. So I feel like 11 is a good number for the tier 1 running backs in this year's class. And for Houston, I think that's perfect. I think it's perfect simply because for the Houston Texans, they're going to restructure contracts, move money around, create the adequate cap space that they need to improve, right? And again, as much as we love some of these bigger, flashier names as skill players and even tight end, when we look at Kyle Pitts being a free agent for Houston, their number one priority this offseason has to be upgrading at the center guard spots. And I'm on record saying for Houston to do that, go after veterans. Those veterans who understand the value, and also they're going to be coming to a team that need them. They may cost maybe not more, but they may be worth more than a tier one running back, which is going to sit around once again 11, 12 million, 10 to 12 million. And I think Javonte Williams deal getting done early, that allows for the Houston Texans to do two things. Number one, refocus. If they are big on Breece Hall and they feel like Breece Hall is the one, then obviously you got to go get him. Houston needs pure playmakers. They don't have a lot of that on this offense. They do not. But if they feel like the value of what a running back can provide behind a good offensive line in this upgraded offensive line unit behind which I presume they'll do, right? If they can get some guys here like Cade, spend money on Tyler Linderbaum, right, who's going to cost a pretty penny. Connor McGovern, he's a guy that's available. Either of the offensive linemen for the Cleveland Browns that you feel like has some room left and some gas left for the tank, their whole offensive line of free agents. But you look at Wyatt Teller, you look at some of those other guys. Tevin Jenkins is a name I'm big on. Houston can re-sign Ed Ingram at right guard. So there's some things to do to upgrade the offensive line. You're going to have to spend money to do so. But for Williams to get that deal done first, they could very well say this: well, we don't need Breece Hall if we get these guys up front to block their ass off. And Breece Hall, who may be in that tier one by himself in many ways in terms of just talent and what Breece Hall provides. Again, it's him and Kenneth Walker, I think, are the two running backs in this year's class that you would consider tier one running backs. But if we do not have the money for that because we upgraded a much glaring need, then there are going to be some tier two guys available. A Tyler Algier from Atlanta, Travis Etienne, who may want to move on from Jacksonville, or maybe Jacksonville may want to move on from him, right? Rico Dowdle, who runs the ball at an extremely high level. There are going to be guys available for the Houston Texans. Brian Robinson is also a guy that'll be available this year. I'm not too big on Brian Robinson. There's a name coming out of Alabama. I thought that in many ways he was overdrafted with the expectations that he brought at the time. But in any case, at some position, we're going to see the Houston Texans, I think in many ways, set their priority, and we're going to understand why they did it. Running back falls under offensive line for me. But for Williams and the dominoes to fall perfectly right before the start of this week for the Houston Texans, that gives them everything that they need to know about this year's baseline, where to start and how far to go for this running back free agent class. Because, again, I go back to one thing. The Texans could very well love what Woody Marks brought to them last year, the toughness, his ability to kind of do certain things, and their belief that maybe he's going to improve and his production could be better behind a better offensive line. They could view Woody Marks as a RB1.5, where maybe you get another guy in here that can do some great things alongside of him at a cheaper cost behind an upgraded, improved, and costly offensive line. Now, the tight end spot is another position that I think, hey, for Houston, can't neglect it. Cannot neglect that tight end spot. So they're going to have to upgrade. Once Houston does upgrade, where does that leave Cade Stover and Brevin Jordan? More Locked On Texans talk when I return. Hey, Texan fans, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, You can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person and connect online. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. Everything is user friendly now. So for a limited time, you could have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Excuse me. Take TurboTaxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back, Texan fans. Here's something that I wanted to bring up. The Texans' rushing success rate since hiring DeMeco Ryans, 35.6. That's in 2025. That's 31st in the league. In 2024, 34.1%, 31st in the league. In 2023, 35.6. Again, that's 29th in the league. They need to find themselves a lead back who can stay healthy, because they found themselves a lead back in Joe Mixon. However, I mean, even in 2024, they were 31st in the league in rushing success. But more importantly, the Texans have got to improve their offensive line, the guys up front, the bodies in the middle, which is where they really lack. And then also on top of that, they got to find the tight end group that they believe can help add to that. So the jumbo package last year, the jumbo personnel, which is where we saw Blake Fisher. We saw the referees announce Blake Fisher so much. At one point, I just said to myself and some colleagues, "Hey man, y'all know he coming in. We don't got to hear his name no more on the jumbotron." And I'm gonna tell you why. It completely eliminated you didn't really have too many moments where you didn't know the Houston Texans had flexibility in their play calling when he was on the field. So he's not a guy that can, block down and leak out and, maybe get a pass on the flats. He's not that type of guy. He's not, and that's what the Houston Texans need from their tight end bunch, right? And they expected that and wanted to see that out of Cade Stover. That didn't happen this past year. In a lot of ways, I truly believe that the Houston Texans did two things with the Brevin Jordan extension. Number one, and first and foremost, they just honored him as a player. This is what Nick Caserio has done. I remember him doing that with not Rex Ryan, with Rex Burkhead, right? Guys that you know are not going to be around for the next full season. They'll come back for training camp, but they did some good things, and the franchise just wants to honor them. So I think that's what he did with the year extension with Brevin Jordan. And also, I mean, a part of that also is I think they feel from an athletic standpoint and his ability to kind of do it all, if he is healthy, Brevin Jordan presents a pretty amount of problems to defenses, right? And so, like the jumbo personnel, you have Blake Fish out there, essentially 3 tackles on the field. Those guys are not going to be bootleg options on the play action. They're not. They're going to stay in and block. And that's the limitation for the Houston Texans offense, which is why this conversation should be centered around why that jumbo personnel, which was a great idea to help with the run game in 2025, why that needs to be scaled back a little bit due to Houston putting real resources to the tight end room. Now, once Houston does that, the next question is the competition for that tight end 3 spot, or just in general, how long should we see Cade Stover and Brevin Jordan stick around? Number one, who provides the most from a schematic standpoint based off of what we've seen? In this year's offense, that question cannot be answered. I mean, we can say Cade Stover has the lead because he's played, but he didn't do anything monumental. He didn't do anything that stood out. I think from his rookie year to this year, limited tape, obviously, but he's gotten better and improved in terms of blocking, especially on the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage. But nothing he did warranted just a guaranteed lock on next year's roster. Nothing. And to follow up to that, for Brevin Jordan, nothing he's done in the last 2 years, no disrespect to him, has guaranteed him a spot on this roster. So for both of them, how long do they have? They have up until the end of this year's training camp. Flat out. Flat out. I mean, the cut candidate options out there are very intriguing. Um, like I mentioned last week, Cole Kmet was a name that's being tossed around. You got TJ Hawkinson, who for Houston, it could make a lot of sense to go Hawkinson and go young tight end in the draft. But these guys are players, Cole Kmet, who's been successful under somewhat of the same thing this offensive scheme would be asking of him to do. Same thing with TJ Hawkinson with his Minnesota background. And so the problems that they present, number one, day one above anybody is anything Dalton Schultz knows what to do and his comfortability with this offense and the terminology and being a trusted tight end for a young quarterback, all of those things that Schultz presents, those tight ends will present as well. And for Cole Kmet, he could possibly present it at a higher level if he's utilized a little bit more. Cole Kmet is a dog, right? And so I look at what they could add in free agency, but also look at what they could add in this year's draft. Again, if they go Ken Sadiq out of Oregon, he's just a flat out better player than those guys. Just flat out. For Stover, you look at his transition to tight end, it's still a work in progress in many ways. And can he line up in the backfield? Can he line up in the slot? Can he line up on the in line of the line of scrimmage? Can he line up at different places and still play at a high level? Or when you see him at certain spots, does it feel like he's still thinking about what to do? I think for the coaching staff here in Houston, they're going to look at that. They're going to look at in year 3, how comfortable are you now being fully transitioned into this role 2 years out of college, where his sophomore year, I believe he transitioned from linebacker to tight end. So now this will be 5 years if you play at tight end. Are you playing with some level of fluidity? And fluidity with your hips, with your hands, with your legs, and knowledge of the game. Where's your IQ level? I think those are questions that when we look specifically at Cade Stover, hard worker, absolutely. But he's been riddled with injuries, hasn't been able to get out on the field a lot. And some of the things that we are teaching you, we may not have time to continue to teach you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Texans moved on from Jake Moreland, who was brought in with DeMeco Ryans in 2023. Obviously, they feel like that tight end room is lacking something. And I think that was the first sign of Houston saying that we're going to change some things with this bunch. Because while Nick Cady did some things that helped Houston out last year, this is why I don't get he didn't make any adjustments. He made all of the adjustments he possibly could, guys. The jumbo tight end set, spoke to, guys, I don't have an additional tight end out there that can block the way I need for him to block to help this run game out. Along with, we need some guys up front in the middle. But that spoke to making the adjustment. For Houston, I think they want to get out of that. And I think they should want to get out of it. Because while Blake Fisher served his role well, him not being an actual tight end and having to be that third tackle, that third offensive lineman, you pretty much know there's going to be, in a lot of ways, some blandness to the offense and predictability to the offense. Stover doesn't help with that, at least not now. Brevin Jordan, you can't trust to help with that, at least not now. I think each of those men have until not free agency, to training camp to figure it out. And they may cut one and bring one back on a practice squad. Obviously, that player would probably be Cade Stover. But again, we don't talk about practice squad players like Luke Lachey, a full year in an NFL system. I'm very excited to see what his body is going to look like. What his progression looks like over the year. The last time we saw him compared to the next time we'll see him in training camp and actually getting some real football getting played. I'm excited to see, could he be that young tight end that if Houston looks to upgrade, he'll be here for the future because of some of the small things that he does. He's a true tight end in comparison to Cade Stover. And what I look at what Brevin Jordan brings, it feels like he's on a time limit as well. So we got till August to see what those tight ends can present. Now for DeMeco Ryans, is he the next Tony Dungy? What do I mean by that? Stick around for more Locked On Texans talk. You ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. Flights, tickets, the whole experience included. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. And now, not only can your pick cash in, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Closing out today's episode with a conversation centered around your head coach. This offseason, a couple of things happened for the Houston Texans that we really didn't talk about. But Dino Vasso, whom I said for the last 2 years it was going to happen, Dino Vasso started to get some defensive coordinator love. Around the league, he's a Texas cornerback coach, and what he's done in that cornerback room, I think, has been remarkable. Getting the most out of guys, getting the most, and getting his All-Pro cornerback to the next level here in the NFL. Kamari Lassiter is right on that baseline, in my opinion, of the next potential All-Pro cornerback, at least outright Pro Bowl vote here in Houston. He plays at a high level. Adding to Jalen Reed in that mix, and some of the other, like Tremont Smith, he's gotten the most out of some guys that no other place in the NFL, no other team in the NFL would have gotten the most out of. You also look at Matt Burke, who this past year, DeMeco Ryans came out, I think after the Jags game, but he came out at one point and mentioned that Burks is actually calling plays this year. Teams checked in on him as well. And I think it's a matter of time before teams start to check in on Rod Wright. And so when I ask this question, is DeMeco Ryans the next Tony Dungy? It's simply centered around, when I look at Tony Dungy's coaching tree, Mike Tomlin, Lovie Smith, Rod Marinelli. Dungy got some guys as a defensive guru that changed the game in the 90s going into the 2000s, and then eventually Tampa Bay moves on from him. The very next year they won a Super Bowl with John Gruden, but that defense was just intact. That defense was stout, and he built that defense. He also helped build that Colts defense that eventually won it in 2009, I believe, in 2008 between the New Orleans Saints. Spawning off of him, you got Lovie Smith, who made a Super Bowl appearance, right? Mike Tomlin and what he's been able to do as a head coach for 20 plus years for the Steelers. For Ryans, I think that could be on the horizon for him. And I think this is a year in 2026, at the end of this next season, it's going to be even harder to hold on to some of these guys. Just calling it like it is. Like, and I think what's interesting is, like, for Matt Burke, I think really for Matt Burke, it's going to be harder to hold on to him for a following year, considering every year the NFL is changing, new head coaches in and out, new offensive coordinators because of this, new defensive coordinators because of this, and many new head coaches could look around the league and say, man, I want to do what Houston is doing on defense. Matt Burke, he'd be the one that can go somewhere. So I think it's going to be harder to hold on to him, which is why I view the 2026 season in many ways as somewhat of a make or break a year, why I think Houston needs to go all in, because as Houston loses players, that's tough, but we have to overvalue in many ways, Houston potentially losing coaches. Now, they were able to retain him this year, both him and Dino Vasso. And that speaks to the culture that DeMeco Ryans has built here off 16 and Kirby. That also speaks to they believe wholeheartedly that they are just a couple of fixes away from winning the Super Bowl here in Houston. They have the defense to do it. It wasn't no offensive coach that got no love this offseason, this hiring cycle. Nobody called for any of these offensive coaches. The coaches around the league, the teams around the league, they genuinely want to replicate. This is a copy and paste league, copycat league. People say it all the time. So they'd want to replicate, hey, man, Burke, how in the hell are you getting the most out of this player in Jalen Petrie? What the hell are you doing with Kamari Lassiter? The ascension for Kalen Bullock. What are you guys doing at D tackle? Like, what the linebacker? Like, they're going to want to call and interview a coach who's getting it done at the highest level that's available. Man, Burke is that guy. Dino Vasso is also that guy. So I think for Houston, they have at least 2 more years with Dino Vasso. Matt Burke, I can see him leaving at the end of next offseason, especially if things go right, where you can leave off into the sunset, somewhat like a Clint Kubiak. Maybe he start getting some head coaching opportunities as well. But I think for DeMeco Ryans, 2 things need to happen. Number one, this team has to get to the championship game for him to be the next quote-unquote Tony Dungy. Number 2, following up another year with a top 5 defense. And number 3, again, putting your coaches in the best position to succeed. I think we undervalue that with DeMeco Ryans. These coaches here in Houston, they all feel like they can succeed because they all trust one another. DeMeco Ryans has given power to all of his coaches, and they've talked about this a lot, just their relationship with Ryans. And more importantly, they draft the right players to do what the defense is asking of them. Plain and simple. DeMeco Ryans, in many ways, could potentially be the next Tony Dungy. So who's going to be the Lovie Smith for this staff? Who's going to be the Mike Tomlin? Stephen Adekogi at the safety spot. At some point, he's going to get called from around the league and say, hey, man, we know you're a position coach, but we just want to interview, at least see, like, can you fit our need here as a potential defensive coordinator? These defensive coaches here in Houston, they are all in, but they are some stud coaches. There has not been one player that has not improved under their watch, positional coaches and coordinator-wise. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12 and also follow me on Instagram as well at Some Sports Guy. Until next time, ladies and gents, Texas fans across the nation, peace.